Hi, this is Javier. The most important lesson I learned from Mr. Brown was to triple check I've backed up my work. Cue silence for comedic effect. And you're listening to the Fifth Period Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Fifth Period, the film podcast that is usually hosted by two media teachers, but I'm afraid today I will be riding solo. My name is Mr. Brown, and due to a technical glitch, both this week's podcast and next week's podcast, which were already recorded, have in fact gone the way of the dodo. A very valuable lesson for any of my students out there on backing up your files. These glitches can happen to the best of us, and unfortunately, I just wasn't quick enough to make copies. Devastating circumstances for anyone who's experienced this before, but no more devastating than Mr. Whittle having to discuss Cars 2 for a second time. So I have relieved him of his duties on this one. That being said, if you are a big Mr. Whittle fan, don't be too disheartened, because I have managed to get his insight on a couple of key moments from the film, and he will be joining us for our student appreciation, as well as our regular weekly watches and Tantalising Trailers segments. And that's why I always say, Whits never quits. Well, actually, this is the first time, but I think I'm going to keep saying it from now on. Our student appreciation today has been a long time coming. Since the very first student intro, we've had a bit of a running joke that we would keep postponing Javier. But we have officially run out of time with the Year 12s graduating, and next week's ep being our final dedication to them. Now, in light of the big podcast deletion of 2023, some are calling it Podgate, he did in fact record a brand new intro, which I feel summarizes the sarcastic banter that we have in class. That being said, I couldn't overlook the recording that he originally put forward, taking on the character of a father whose son had been kidnapped and would only be returned to him if he did the intro for us.
Give me back my son, you animals!
See, that's what we get for trying to encourage more creative intros from our students. Now, Mr. Whittle, it was only a fraction of the original 3-hour monologue that Jav sent through, and his portrayal was very subdued. But could you tell he's a bit of a performer?
Well, if that's anything to go by, he's certainly endeavouring to take himself to the next level whenever he has his opportunity, a blank canvas, if you will. He does certainly look to fill the canvas creatively. He
has been at every film club. He was one of my Year 12 students this year. His film won an award at the VCE Film Night, which you actually awarded him, Mr. Whittle.
Yes, and rightly so. And I have taught Javier in previous years as well. Absolutely adore the individual. So, yeah, well-deserved opportunity to show his creative skills in another platform, that being our podcast.
Oh, and also he was the lead in our production this year too. So it is safe to say, yes, it is safe to say he will be leaving a very big hole in the school as well as our hearts. Thank you for a great year, mate, and best of luck.
Love your work, mate.
You may now have your son back. Alrighty, Cars 2 Electric Boogaloo. Now, just before you take off, Mr. Whittle, can I just get your initial thoughts on the film?
Yeah. There they are.
That good?
Yeah. Lemons. Well, sorry, a lemon.
A lemon. Yeah. One single lemon.
Yeah, yep.
Out of 5, I imagine?
I knew it going in that this wasn't going to be for me, and, I was proven correct on this one. So, I feel bad putting it down generally. Obviously, many people enjoy this film, but I did not. I would say for Film Appreciation Club over the last 2 years, this is my least favourite film that I've watched.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry, Riles.
Also, when we started in the middle of the ocean, I was thinking to myself, I thought this was Cars 2, not bloody Boats 2.
Well, it'd be Boats 1, wouldn't it? Because there was only one boat.
That's true. That's true.
The movie's just called Boat. It's just singular.
Thank you for joining us, Wits, and we shall catch you for our segments later in the podcast.
Ka-chow!
Ka-chow indeed. Anytime I need to get Wits' insight on something, I will just insert this little flashback effect. and chuck in a soundbite. Now, we have a couple of Cars fans in the group at Film Club, with Riley campaigning for it to be screened for the last 2 years. It's definitely gained a bit of a following as a result of that. I know Harry is another one who is super keen that it has finally made it onto the list. So even though this time around I will be slightly more condensed than the last version, I think you'll still be very, very happy to hear that I quite enjoyed the film. Now, Wits told me it was not well received by fans when it originally came out because it went in a very different direction than the first Cars film. But personally, I think that was a major plus for me. Now, I haven't seen the original Cars in its entirety, but I know it centers on the racing aspect, which I found to be the least interesting part of this film. The spy angle, however, is right up my alley. Part homage, paying great respect to films like James Bond, but also quite a lot of satire as well, with some bits feeling like they were kind of straight out of an Austin Powers film.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
It all just really worked for me. Now, we kick things off on a boat in the middle of the ocean called the Northwestern. Now, I suspect this is probably a nod to the film North by Northwest, which is an absolute classic. We've actually done it on the podcast before. Both Wits and I are huge fans. But also, both of these films feature a main character who is mistaken for a spy. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think this might have been a subtle nod to that. Riley even referred to this film after we watched North by Northwest as the North by Northwest of the Cars world. On the back of the boat, out of the shadows emerges Finn McMissile, played by Michael Caine, and he announces, "I'm looking for a car." Now, I looked into the model of car he was based on, and it wasn't an Aston Martin, but I did think when I first saw him, he looked a lot like the iconic silver Bond car. Motorheads out there will probably scold me for even making the comparison, but I also really liked just the details on his car. I really, really appreciated the front grille being kind of like that pencil mustache. I really got a kick out of the way they turn human things into car equivalents for the film, but Wits was not a fan of that at all. What was the core of why you didn't like this film?
Well, I mean, these cars, these living, breathing cars, don't need to be cars. Like, why are we watching a world of cars that live? Like, I understand that sometimes animals get, what's it called? No, I can't pronounce that word. Anthropomorphized. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was it.
I think I got it. Nailed it. English teacher. When we have animals that can talk or other things that can talk, it's premised on the fact that your audience goes, I'm curious, and it'd be kind of cute if that kind of thing could actually talk.
Like you said, Toy Story.
Toy Story is a great example, right? You know, kids wonder, like, when I leave the room, do my toys come alive and have parties and, you know, have conflict and stuff like that? No one's ever thought that about cars on the road, okay? Maybe one person has, the Lasetta or whatever his name is, and therefore I could not connect fundamentally with what they're going for in this film.
Did you say Lasetta?
Lasetta?
I think it's John Lasseter.
Lasetta, yeah.
Yeah, Lasseter.
Yeah.
It gives it kind of like a...
Yeah, he's putting the less in Lasetta.
He sure is.
Yeah.
Finn sneaks onto a big tanker, and we find out that his colleague, Agent Turbo, has been crushed into a cube. This was a really cool reveal for me because I thought it was super dark for a kid's film. I really wasn't expecting it. And we get another car death later on, which you just aren't used to seeing in Pixar films. But yeah, as I said, I really liked it. Also, when this reveal happens, the flames on the boat kind of shoot up behind Finn McMissile to really emphasize his shocked reaction, which I thought was a very nice touch as well. Then we get a great action escape sequence. I found this scene way more interesting than the other race scenes in the film. Maybe it's kind of because of all the gadgets or just... It was creatively shot in the way that it kind of goes up that spiral ramp. And it ends with McMissile escaping, presumed dead by all of the villains. Then we cut to Radiator Springs, where we see Mater, eagerly awaiting the return of his best friend, Lightning McQueen, who has been out on a big racing circuit, touring everywhere. This was another heavy criticism of the film, with Mater taking on the lead role and McQueen's role being significantly reduced. I could see if people were really connected to a lead of the first film to be very disappointed when he takes a back seat for the second. And Mater can be a little bit annoying as a character at times, but I think he was a good choice for establishing the main themes of the film about kind of underestimating someone who is capable of a lot, and also just appearances in general being a bit deceiving. So McQueen turns up, showing off his trophy, and Mater goes, "Wow." One wow in the whole film, and they didn't even give it to Owen Wilson. What a missed opportunity.
Wow. 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 Wow.
They spend the day together, and then McQueen ditches Mater to have dinner with Sally, which plays into the kind of major themes of the film, with Mater feeling left out, and also about him kind of taking responsibility and being a bit self-sufficient on his own. During the dinner, we see on TV the story of oil billionaire Sir Miles Axelrod, who got lost without fuel while navigating the world, and was inspired to design a new energy-efficient fuel as a result. This was a great satire of billionaire stories you see presented in films all the time, and about how they kind of form their empire from some sort of traumatic event. Very, very cliche. So to prove that this new energy-efficient fuel is good, he has created a new racing tournament where all the cars will race with his fuel, all in all. We are introduced to the favorite of the race, Italian car Francesco Bernoulli, played by John Turturro. Now, Mr. Whittle, you are a huge John Turturro fan. Did that help kind of soften the film a little for you? Did he add anything for you?
When his name came up on the opening credits, it certainly did. As in, like, I thought, okay, maybe there's opportunity here for me to find an in, because I do adore him. Namely from Coen Brothers stuff, Barton Fink and Big Lebowski, Oh Brother, that kind of stuff. But yeah, the role he plays is probably the most engaging character in the film.
Yeah, look, I agree with you.
But it was still pretty vanilla. Like, you know, he didn't win me over.
Not even he could save it for you.
No.
After Mater calls in, Francesco and McQueen have some playful banter, and McQueen lands himself in the tournament. Cue the travel montage. I thought this was Cars 2, not bloody Planes 2. Am I right? At the Grand Prix event in Tokyo, McMissile turns up and chats with Holly Shiftwell, which I thought was a nice nod to the double entendres of the Bond films. Now, I had to rope you into this section specifically because the first time we recorded, I could only remember one of these names. So I have seized the opportunity on the re-record to look them up, and they are truly ridiculous.
You're referring to the Bond
girls.
The Bond girls, yeah.
So I want you to have a listen and then tell me which one you think your favorite is.
Do you want me to do some music under?
I mean, I always like to be scored in everything that I do. All right, so we have Honey Rider, Pussy Galore, Mary Goodnight, Molly Warm Flash.
Oh, I'm glad that ended on an SH.
Kissy Suzuki, Plenty O'Toole.
Wait, and that's a female?
That is a female, yes. Chew Me, Holly Goodhead, Bibi Dahl, and Xenia Onatop. These are all genuine Bond girls' names.
What era of Bond do these ones... Surely they weren't doing these in the 90s and beyond.
So Xenia Onatop is actually with Pierce Brosnan, so they did span quite a long way.
But all the other ones that... Xenia Onatop is, a bit more subtle than the others.
I basically read them in the order that they came out.
So I could certainly see 80s and 70s Bond having these, yeah?
I would imagine that most of these were paired opposite Sean Connery.
Right.
But it really does make the names in Austin Powers like Felicity Shagwell actually seem quite tame in
You know
comparison.
what's funny is that, like, naturally, Roger Moore is kind of got that double entendre.
And he did the most Bond films, so he really was Roger Moore. I got nothing there.
You got something to work with.
Yeah. How do you feel about the joke where Mater ingests wasabi thinking that it's ice cream? You were a big fan of that one, right? That was your favorite joke in the film.
On paper, this is my bread and butter. Like, this is something, real kind of dad jokey kind of stuff. But just the execution of it, I was eye rolling. Dawn, my dog next to me, was also eye rolling. Like, it just was.
Dawn's a tough critic there.
Yeah, this is true. It fell flat for me. Yeah.
Fair enough. After this, Mater embarrasses Lightning McQueen even further by leaking oil everywhere, which I guess in the Cars universe just means you're incontinent. We then meet the American car Rod Redline, played by Bruce Campbell of Evil Dead fame.
Groovy.
He is there to meet Shiftwell and McMissile, but is instead attacked by the villain's lackeys. Absolute stroke of genius to get Joe Mantegna to play one of these bad guys. He is the voice of Fat Tony from The Simpsons, for anyone who doesn't know, or the bad guy from the lesser-known film Baby's Day Out. But either way, he is just perfect because he has that great gangster voice.
Could we have the money now?
The answer is no.
I'm afraid I must insist. You see, my wife, she has been most vocal on the subject of the pretzel monies. Where's the money? When are you going to get the money? Why aren't you getting the money now? And so on. So please, the money.
Redline decides to unload the tracking device and the information that the others are all after onto Mater, and as a result, Shiftwell assumes Mater is the agent. Although the security question she asks him to confirm this is simply just a question about cars that anyone could potentially know. So I feel like that's a major flaw in their spy code. Redline is then tortured, which, again, I really enjoyed because it felt like a James Bond film, kind of specifically referring to Goldfinger with that laser that is slowly moving towards Sean Connery.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
It was also great, though, just to hear Bruce Campbell slinging taunts at the thugs while he's that close to death.
I'll swallow your soul!
Come get some.
So we learn the new fuel, all in all, is explosive when subjected to a magnetic pulse, which we see in full force moments later when Redline is killed. The second cold-blooded murder in the film, and I love how dark it is. These cars aren't messing around. At the first race, the electromagnet is used to take out a bunch of racers, and a radio interception by the spies causes Mater to accidentally tank McQueen's race, and he is not happy at all. I know he's caught up in the disappointment of the moment, but he is just an absolute jerk to Mater in this scene. And what's worse, when Mater leaves the next day, he's surprised. Like, why on earth would you be surprised? You absolutely crushed your best friend and then told him to leave. It's not going to be a shock if he actually does after that. So Mater never actually makes it home, though, and is instead picked up by Shiftwell and McMissile, who he agrees to work with. He obviously realizes they are spies at this stage, but it just annoyed me that they still don't realize that he isn't. I mean, he keeps telling them, and he clearly doesn't act like a spy, but they just shrug it off. It's very, very frustrating. So they head to France to rendezvous with McMissile's informant, where they learn that the plot all involves loser cars, aka lemons, all getting together to plan something. So they don't get the full details yet, but they learn they will be at the second race in Italy. Now, Mr. Whittle wasn't happy with how they belittled the lemons in this section.
Well, it's fundamentally discriminatory. They're premising the whole antagonist group on saying that this group of people are lesser, and that's discrimination. So I don't like that. It's a very American vibe that the film has around the US cars, and also the slick, say more British cars are the superior group. All right. all the smaller cars that are more based around just functionality, which when you look into the European market of cars, most of their cars are like that because they don't care about, how tough a car is so much in Europe. I'm talking wider Europe. So yeah, it's a very American view to go, those cars are lesser and we're therefore going to call them lemons. It's almost like some kind of racism.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what the comparison is, right?
Racism?
Yeah, nice. Nice. I'm so glad. So when we were originally recording, we endeavored to include as many puns as we possibly could in, but we actually didn't have that many. So I'm glad you were able to sneak one back in on the re-record. Yep. Now, Riley actually uses the term lemons in his day-to-day. He called Jave a lemon in class literally last week, and we just burst out laughing. Look, I'm sure if he'd have taken it as seriously as Wits, it would have been no laughing matter. Mater gets disguised, and I like how he doesn't want to give up his dents. I thought that was a nice metaphor for him kind of valuing all the things that he's been through. As Mark Twain said, wrinkles should merely indicate where smiles have been. I think Mr. Whittle would have actually really appreciated that quote. It is just a damn shame that he wasn't around to hear it. The setting of the second race is Portocosso. It is a fictional place on the Italian Riviera, but it looks very much like Portofino, which is a real place and is actually the main setting for yet another Michael Caine film. One of my absolute favorites where he stars opposite Steve Martin. It's called Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Highly recommend it for anyone who hasn't seen.
His name is James. No, his name is James Josephson. No. James Lawrence. Lawrence Fells. Lawrence Fangs. Forrest Lawrencetown. Lawrence Luck. Lawrence. His name is James Jessenton. Lawrence Jesterton.
Lawrence Jameson?
Yes! We're like this!
The crowd for the race actually got a very good chuckle from me. First up, there was Francesco's mama, but also the Pope car in a Pope car was a particularly good gag, I thought. In his new disguise, Mater swaps places with the evil tow truck, and this is when the full evil plot is revealed. All the lemons gather around and receive a recap of their plan from their anonymous boss, which up until this point in the film, everyone kind of thought it was the professor, but there's someone lurking in the shadows. It's a convenient reveal just so Mater can kind of be caught up on the plan, but that's okay. I'm happy to overlook that kind of stuff. But yes, essentially they are crashing cars to tank the image of the energy-efficient fuel in order to drive up traditional fuel sales, which they will all benefit from as they all own a big fuel tanker. Just a side note, I thought it was a real missed opportunity not to have a DeLorean as one of the big lemons at the meeting. Notorious for breaking down. I mean, just ask Marty McFly.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Hearing the plan over Mater's comms, McMissile tries to stop the electromagnet, but unfortunately he is captured in the process. As a result, everyone in the race besides McQueen and Francesco crash. It is devastating. The final race of the Grand Prix is still green lit, but under suspicion that the fuel is dangerous, the racers are all allowed to opt out of using, all in all. McQueen refuses, though, as his team has sworn by its safety, and he has recently learnt a valuable lesson after crushing Mater that he should trust his friends. Because of the choice, the bad guys have to take McQueen out to really cement that all in all is bad and tank the reputation of alternate fuels. Mater tries to warn him, but gives himself away and is captured. Cut to London, and Shiftwell, Mater, and McMissile are all tied up in Big Bentley. Now, I quite liked the pun, Big Bentley. I mean, after we had endeavored to include puns in this episode, it was nice that the film was getting on board as well. I thought it was very considerate of the bad guys to bring the good guys along as well to the location of the last race. You know, just in case they could escape and wanted to warn McQueen. We do, of course, find out shortly after this that was the plan all along, but it relied very, very heavily on a lot of things just kind of falling into place. I mean, the odds of them escaping were not high. Mater dagguns himself out of the ropes and lands on the very gears that should have crushed him, but he has no trouble whatsoever driving away, just straight over the top of them. McMissile and Shiftwell tell him to go on without them and that they'll be fine, doing the selfless thing. But then literally just after he leaves, they do escape, using their weapons and driving. Probably the two things that they should have tried first when they were captured. For some reason, the electromagnet doesn't work on McQueen, but we do find out that they have a backup plan, planting a bomb on Mater, who selflessly tries to drive away to protect McQueen. But because McQueen is so determined to make amends with his friend, he follows him. Now, this was good for tension, I thought, but it was also just very frustrating that McQueen kept misinterpreting what Mater was saying. Like, he's literally saying, I am the bomb. And McQueen's like, yeah, you are the bomb. Just dumb gag and very, very frustrating. A couple of goons crash into a British pub and get beaten up, which might seem inconsequential, but they snuck a Wilhelm scream into that moment, and I was absolutely delighted. So Mater figures it all out and confronts Sir Axelrod, who was the mastermind all along. Dun dun dun! I quite like this reveal. I mean, I didn't pick it. Maybe the signs were there, but I missed it. And I will say the plan, while it kind of makes sense, it's very, very risky. He wants to tank his new fuel alternative so that his original traditional fuel source will do better. But tanking one of the fuels that is under his name is not really going to do great for his PR. Like, his brand is tarnished pretty significantly after that. So I don't know that I'd be trusting his original fuel source either. So it all wraps up pretty quickly. The Queen knights Mater using an aerial for his service. And then everyone, secret agents and racers included, all head back to the hippest spot in the world, Radiator Springs. And they all live happily ever after. That is until Cars 3, where a horrible pileup takes them all out. No, I jest. Well, maybe. I haven't seen Cars 3, and I don't think I will be getting around to it. But yeah, that's it. As Whit said at the top, he found a new wooden spoon winner for our films. But personally, I didn't mind it. I have been dreading this watch a little bit, but I was very pleasantly surprised. As I said, though, I don't think I will be racing out to see any of the others in the franchise. And with that, I will now reconnect with Mr. Whittle for our weekly watches.
Weekly watches. Weekly watches. I love you.
As this is our first podcast back after the holiday break, we've had quite a bit of time to build up our weekly watches. It's actually been 2 weeks of watches. So I imagine you've got quite an extensive list, Mr. Whittle.
Yeah, and likewise to you, yeah? You've had so much time to watch all those films, Mr. Brown. You maybe even will trump my 27 films.
Ooh, I was close. I was close with my 5, yes. But yes, I didn't quite get to 27.
No, so I'm not going to reel through all 27. I have whittled it down to a top 5.
Nice. For me, I'm going to kick things off with following on from one of the podcasts that we did at the end of last term. So we did the first National Treasure film, and then I was really curious to go back, and it had been a while since I'd seen the sequel, National Treasure Book of Secrets, but I wanted to go and have a look at it because I even said to you, Mr. Whittle, that I thought you'd prefer that one because Nick Cage gets a little bit more bizarre and crazy and out there. A bit more cagey, yeah.
A very different kind of cagey.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Almost the opposite. I was very pleased to see that that was, in fact, the case. I don't think the film as a whole is better than the first one, but it was an enjoyable watch for me. Like, it's got all the treasure hunting elements of the first film. It feels like the poor man's Indiana Jones once again. But yeah, it was nice to see Nick Cage having some crazy moments in the mix as well.
Fair enough. I mean, that's not going to incite me to go and watch it. Like, there are other Nick Cage films that I know he's very much cage uncaged.
Yes, cage uncaged. I love it.
Yes, yes. So, I would go in for Wild at Heart or Face Off. One film I actually watched, which isn't in my top 5, but now that you brought it up, was Raising Arizona, which is
I love Raising Arizona.
Coen Brothers' second ever film from the late 80s.
It's so bizarre.
And it's a very early Nick Cage one as well, but he does get a chance to be very much Nick Cage.
He's a hunk in that one too.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Yep. So first for me, director Brian De Palma is known for his style. We've talked about Blowout on this podcast before and how much we both like that film. So I went back and watched a few of his films over that break. I watched one of his very early films called Phantom of the Paradise. I watched what's arguably his best-known film, The Untouchables. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's certainly my favourite.
And it's such a great film. So that's late 80s mafia film. Really awesome. Gangster.
I also rank Mission Impossible right up there.
Yes, that's of course. We've talked about Mission Impossible. I totally that's my favourite one, and it's a lot of it is because of his style. Body Double as well. I went to that. It's a lesser-known one from the 80s, and that was still great. But the one that stood out for me was Carrie. So his rendition or adaptation of the Stephen King novel, mid-70s, quite experimental, flawed in some ways, but certainly liked seeing him just doing some interesting stuff with lighting and camera, and you could see a lot of his style getting established in that film. He's a much more refined director in the latest stuff, but yeah, this one warmed my heart for that reason.
Really solid performances too in that.
Yes, absolutely. John Travolta's in that one as well. Sissy Spacek obviously plays Carrie. There's a few other faces that you recognise and go, oh, I know that guy. But yeah, Carrie, great horror film, great music in it as well. So yeah, if you're checking this podcast out during the Halloween season, Carrie might be one to put on.
Yeah, nice. How many Brian De Palma films did you watch over the break?
4.
Woo, 4. That's a full-blown De Palma-rama.
Yes.
All right, next up for me, it was a double feature, and I'm talking about them both together because Mr. Whittle and I actually had a movie night over the holidays where we sat down and we watched, first up, Talk to Me. Which we had both seen and loved at the cinema. We've had extensive discussions about it, but we really wanted to actually sit down, do a rewatch. I know you said you were going to do it over the holidays, and I said, let's do it together so that we can actually do a bit of discussion back and forth on it. And yeah, I had a great time revisiting this one.
For sure. Like, we both agreed after having seen it independently of each other at the cinemas that we adored it. So when we had the chance to watch it together and kind of dissect it, go all Ollie Mazza and talk over while the film's playing, but, about the film and really kind of, analyze it. I had a lot of fun revisiting it, and it confirmed that it is a great Australian horror film that everyone should check out.
Yeah, and since we first recorded this, Ethan has now seen it and adores Talk to Me.
And I've had a couple of friends see it, and they've said the same thing. So the consensus is that it is great.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what these guys do next, whether it be a sequel for this or something entirely different. But yeah, they're well on their way to being some great directors.
For sure. For me, not only did I visit Brian De Palma's back catalogue, I also kept going with a bit of David Cronenberg back catalogue. So I think I spoke about A History of Violence on the previous podcast. I went and watched the film of his that, I think it was the one immediately after A History of Violence. He continued working with who is now one of my favourite actors at the moment, Viggo Mortensen. Like, everything I see him in, he's amazing. He's in this film, Eastern Promises. He plays like a Russian gangster in this, and he just blows away every scene. Like, he is just so good in the film. Like, the tension build. Obviously, a big part of why I like Cronenberg is his style of building tension. He uses a lot of mids and closes to really give that claustrophobic look to his films. he's also a fan of the Tight 90. So like,
Yep.
I really like how concise he keeps the story. It's very focused. Warning of graphic violence, like in many of his films. That's what Cronenberg does. You could just go look up his wiki, and that's what he's going to be known for, is really contrasting his stories of humanity with that kind of stark violence.
Yeah, and lots of like practical effects for really stylized violence as well.
Yeah, but if you can look past that, Eastern Promises would probably be in his top films for me. I was blown away by it. It was great.
Yeah, right. I haven't seen that, so I should probably check that out.
Yeah.
So as I said, we did a double feature. So after we watched Talk to Me, we watched Cooties, which is a zombie parody film set in a primary school. Basically, the kids in the primary school all contracted the zombie virus, but for some reason, they don't fully explain it. For some reason, the adults aren't affected. If you've gone through puberty, then you can no longer get the zombie infection. So I love this film because I really like zombie films anyway, and I like how they parody that. But more than anything, I like the setting for it, and I feel like I gauge a lot more of the comedy from the fact that the central characters are teachers, and there's a lot of reflection from characters that we see around the school as teachers ourselves. And the cast is so strong. So it's got Elijah Wood in it. It's got Rainn Wilson, Lee Winnell. So yeah, really, really strong cast, and a lot of SNL types to kind of round it out as well.
Look, we've all wanted to do that to Vice Principal Sims, okay? I know I have. But a line has been crossed. You can't eat the teachers, man.
I had a lot of fun watching this one. After watching Talk to Me, I'm a bit of an early to bed guy, so I was like reluctant to press play on a second film. But you said just let's watch the start, and if you like it, and sure enough, like I was in. So it was very, very funny, really kind of fast paced. So kept you engaged throughout. Yeah, certainly recommended as well. Third one for me was A Ghost Story. This is a film about 6 years old now. 2017, I think, was its release year. Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. It's an A24 film, so if you know your A24 production company stuff, they're going to go in for more of the kind of indie-ish, kind of thematic-based stuff, and this one does that as well. Spoiler alert, but it's pretty much the premise of the film is that they're a couple, Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck, and then Casey Affleck dies very early on. So the film's about him as a ghost, observing what happens in life after he's gone. So what happens in his wife's world and all that stuff. And it's just very heartfelt. It's got good themes of reflection and letting go. And I was in the right mood for it. And also the film is stunning to look at. But, it's slow in some parts. And if you're not in for kind of slow cinema, you might get a bit bored by it, but it worked for me. So that's
right.
A Ghost Story.
It sounds like it's got a very similar vibe to the Robin Williams film What Dreams May Come.
Yeah, which I vaguely remember, but it's not something that I recall enough to say absolutely. That's one that actually has been pending. You're going to talk about Robin Williams, I'm going to bring it up. I watched an old film of his called The World According to Garp.
Yep.
Which was so-so. And so Robin Williams, he has such a plethora of back catalogue.
Would you say I have a plethora of piñatas? A what? A plethora. Oh, yes. You have a plethora. Jefe, what is a plethora? Why, guapo? Well, you told me I have a plethora. And I just would like to know if you know what a plethora is. I would not like to think that a person would tell someone he has a plethora and find out that that person has no idea what it means to have a plethora.
Ooh,
That's one as well that I've been meaning to revisit, because when it came out, which is I think in mid-90s, I remember seeing it going, oh, that's not for 16-year-old Whittle, but maybe it would be for, old man Whittle. Yeah.
And look, What Dreams May Come, it's not really my kind of film, but it does sound very similar. Like it's quite visually spectacular to watch, and
is it more colourful and dreamscapey, that one?
Yeah. It almost looks like a painting a lot of the times. Yeah, which is very, very cool. But I think it was probably just a little bit slow for me.
Right.
I don't think it's a bad film. I just don't think it's my
I'm
kind
going to
of
add it
film.
to the watch list. I think that one would go down for me.
Yeah, I'd be interested to get your thoughts.
Yeah.
Next for me, What We Do in the Shadows. So this is the film version of What We Do in the Shadows by Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement. It's very funny because when we first recorded this, I said that it had inspired me to go and check out the TV series as well, which now that we're recording it at a delayed stage, I have watched the TV series as well, but I'll save that for next week's podcast to talk about. But the film itself, I love. I've seen it many, many times, and the reason I returned to it is I'm doing mockumentaries with my year 10s at the moment. So I've just been looking at a couple of different examples of mockumentaries. We looked at Best in Show as well, just some clips from that. I love the format. I wouldn't say I've seen a heap of mockumentary films, but when done well, I think it's a really, really engrossing genre. And I think the key part of it is finding a subject that is interesting enough that you would feasibly make a documentary about it. And I think the idea to have vampires who have settled in New Zealand in the lead up to a big vampire event is just such a hilarious idea for the concept of this particular film.
This film is ingenious. I love this film so much. Again, I think it's 85 minutes, this film. It's a very, very tight film.
Short and sharp.
And the execution of the mockumentary genre is just on point. The momentum and the jokes, and it's just, there's never a dull moment in that film.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's such an ingenious idea to take people that are so far removed from our regular life, but then present them in everyday scenarios. It's such a good source of comedy.
Imperfect, with a little bit of conflict as well. Check out What We Do in the Shadows for sure if you haven't already. It's a great film.
Taika Waititi is an amazing performer in it. So many people would know him for his directing style, his writing. Now that he's heavily involved in Marvel, he's become a really, really big name. Also Jojo Rabbit, really, really big films.
Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, well, that's Marvel, right?
Sorry, I'm being facetious because that one got panned a bit, didn't it?
Ragnarok did well. Yeah. It was Love and Thunder that got panned.
Sorry, yes, yeah.
But especially for his performance in this, I think that's one of the major strengths of the film, because you see him play cameo roles here and there, but you never get to see him take on a leading role. And his character, I think it's Viego or whatever it is, but just the opening sequence has him trying to gather all of his flatmates, and he goes down into the basement and there is a Nosferatu-style vampire, and there's just bones scattered all over the floor. And he basically says, oh, what's this? Oh, it's a spinal column. Yuck. And just this voice that he does, everything he says is hilarious. Yeah. He's fantastic.
And I was thinking maybe I should just bring a broom down here for you if you wanted to sweep up some of the skeletons. I don't know.
Speaking of winning comedy, the next one for me was, I went to the cinemas for a double feature on the holidays, and one of them was great, one of them was not. So the other one is...
what was the order?
The first one was the winner, and the second one was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was not a win, so it's therefore not making my top 5.
I still haven't seen it because of the fact that you didn't like it.
I mean, you may, who knows, but I'm not the only one I've spoken to that thought it was a bit of a fizzer. But the one that was a win on that day was Theatre Camp. So, again, mockumentaries. This is a mockumentary-style film as well. So everyone knows the concept of the American summer camps, where over the American summer, kids go away, so the parents send them off so they leave them alone for 5 weeks. We should do that more here. So this is about a particular camp that's set up for theatre kids, and it's got all of the tropes that you'd expect from that kind of setup. And the kids are great in it. I'm always a bit reluctant around films that rely on kid actors, but this film has great kid actors in it, but the adult cast as well are really strong. Not many big names in it. Jimmy Tatro is probably the biggest name in it. Patty Harrison, who's one of my favorite modern comedians, she's in it as well. But yeah, it's so fun. smiles galore for me on this film. I will rewatch it as soon as I can because it was a lot of fun. So
I'm really excited to watch it myself.
Certainly recommend Theatre Camp.
Yeah, it did give off that Wet Hot American Summer kind of style of comedy as well.
For sure.
Hey, let's all promise that in 10 years from today, we'll meet again, and we'll see what kind of people we've blossomed into.
Yeah.
What time you want to meet?
You mean 10 years from now?
Yeah.
Let's meet in the morning so we can make a day of it.
Okay, so what is it? Is it like 9 or 9:30?
Well, let's say 9. That way we can be here by 9:30.
Well, no, why don't we say 9:30 and then make it your beeswax to be here at 9:30? I mean, we're all going to be in our late 20s by then. I just don't see any reason why we can't be places on time.
Okay, then. Settled. 9:30 it is. All agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Great.
Because I have something at 11.
My final one I will keep short and sharp. I saw Saw X. So the 10th film in the franchise, but it's very confusing because there's been spin-offs and timelines are all over the shop with Saw. I loved it. I really, really loved it. I think that it's probably the strongest entry in the franchise since the original. I'm not going to go into too much depth. If people are kind of curious to know a little bit more about the details, I actually ended up doing a review for it after I saw it because I was keen to see what other people had thought on it. So I jumped onto YouTube to look at some other reviews. And because I'd seen it the morning that it came out, there was nothing there. So I was like, oh, well, untapped market. I might as well make something. So yeah, if you're curious to hear my thoughts, I have a spoiler-free review on the channel that you can go check out. But yeah, I definitely think if you're into the Saw franchise, it is well worth a watch.
Cool. Final one for me was a rewatch, which I know you're not a fan of this one, but I am. Donnie Darko. So early 2000s, kind of your dark, broody, targeted at your teenagers, but like also your early 20s kids. But like, yeah, I certainly, this one warms my heart because of the nostalgia factor as well. It was very much targeted at me at the time it came out. But I do, on the rewatch, I still find it great. Like, I just like the mood it gives off. I like the performances in it. There's just a darkness to it. Like, yeah, so I enjoyed it, the Donnie Darko.
And look, I probably need to return to it before I completely dismissed it as a film. It was a while ago since I've seen it, but I remember the main thing standing out to me as something that I didn't like about it was that I felt like the time travel logic in it is flawed, but who knows, maybe even that holds up better than I thought it did.
Well, I mean, those of you who are long-time listeners to our podcast since the start of the year knows that I sometimes just ignore plot points in favor of just like being kind of in the mood of things. And so that didn't stand out to me on either the original watches or this recent rewatch. But that's not to say it's not there. I'm sure if there's a plot hole around the continuity or time or whatever, I'm sure it's there, but I didn't notice it.
It must be some kind of hot tub time machine.
This is scientifically possible.
Oh my god, okay, Professor Hawking, tell me how this is scientifically possible.
All right, I write Stargate fan fiction, so I think I know what I'm talking about right now.
So, yeah, maybe on the rewatch you'll be a bit more forgiving.
Maybe.
Yeah.
With that, let us move on to Tantalising Trailers.
Trailers. Tantalizing films. Trailers. Don't know if we will be a fan. How will it be? We'll know in time.
It'll be a quick one for me. I've only got 3 trailers this week.
As do I.
Great. So let's kick things off with Argyle. This is the new Henry Cavill, Bryce Dallas Howard film, but they are not the only stars in it. It features Sam Rockwell, Sam Jackson, Bryan Cranston. It is a stellar cast. All people that I really, really like. The narrative, I feel like perhaps they've given a bit too much away in the trailer. So basically what it is Bryce Dallas Howard is a spy novelist. So she writes about this spy called Argyle, and in her versions of the book, Henry Cavill plays the fictional spy. But as the trailer goes on, it reveals that a lot of the stuff that she's writing is coming true, and so a real government organization, a team of spies, recruits her to help them kind of figure out what's going on. And so I felt like perhaps they could have marketed it to make it seem like it was just a spy film with Henry Cavill originally, so that there was an element of mystery in those other plot details that are revealed. I thought it was an interesting choice that in the very first trailer, they gave that much information away.
Yeah, so that hopefully implies that there's a lot more to give away throughout the rest of the narrative.
Yeah, I hope so.
Great cast, though. Sam Rockwell especially
yeah.
is always a one for me.
You're not gonna die on the planet, guy.
I'm not? What's my last name?
It's, I don't know.
Nobody knows. Do you know why? Because my character isn't important enough for a last name. Because I'm gonna die 5 minutes in.
Guy, you have a last name.
Do I? Do I?
Yes.
For all you know, I'm just crewman number 6.
Are we there yet?
And Henry Cavill is he's become synonymous with the spy role. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Mission Impossible.
Yes.
Although in this one, he is rocking a super flat top.
Aim for the flat top. For me, first one is a doco. It's called Hot Potato, Hot Potato. It is a doco about the Wiggles. Now, pretty much everyone knows the Wiggles, and if you were born in the last 30, 40 years for me, you've probably grown up with them as a kid in some aspect as well, maybe like a version of them, because there's now been, I think, 3 or 4 different groups of people labeled the Wiggles, but this one's about the original Wiggles for the most part.
I reckon they might have missed a trick not calling it Getting Wiggy With It.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so this one is going to be out on Amazon Prime, I believe, and I'm interested to see, whether they tell a cool story. I know there was always ups and downs in the behind-the-scenes world of the Wiggles. Maybe it'll be a tell-all tale of the Wiggle world.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Next for me, Night of the Hunted. I didn't recognize the main actress in this film. I should have written her name down. But the concept seems very, very simple. A woman goes into a petrol station, and while she is in there, someone terrorizes the petrol station. A sniper rifle, essentially, with a sniper rifle. It's not a sniper rifle that terrorizes
talking
it.
cars, talking sniper rifles.
No.
Yeah.
I believe it's a person, but we never actually see them. Perhaps it is a talking sniper rifle. But I've always been a really big fan of sitcoms. They call them bottle episodes. I don't know what the technical term for it is in a film, but a film that takes place in a central location where we basically see the events play out in real time.
So it's also like real-time play out as well. Yeah.
Well, it's hard to gauge that from the trailer, but it looks like
setting,
it. Yeah, but you look at a movie like Phone Booth with Colin Farrell.
Mass, which I talked about on the last episode, was one like that as well.
That's right, yeah.
And what's the classic Hitchcock? Rope. Yeah.
Great film.
Yep. And Sanctuary, which is a recent hit for me as well that came out this year. So yeah, I'm a fan of those ones as well.
Yeah, so I feel like those films really rely on the acting performances, and based on what I saw in the trailer, the lead actress is doing a fantastic job in that regard. So yeah, I'm definitely going to check that one out. Night of the Hunted.
Cool. Last one for me is a comedy that's coming out on Netflix soon called Old Dads. This one's very much targeting an audience of, say, older millennials who just don't understand what the modern generations are doing, that kind of vibe. Seems like it's filled with jokes that kind of hang shit on some of the more kind of woke ways of thinking. So it'll be interesting to see how politically correct it is. It is directed and featuring Bill Burr, so if you know his comedy. Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. The preview looked like a lot of fun, so that lands soon on Netflix. That'll be one to check out.
Sweet. My final one is Thanksgiving. So they released a teaser trailer a couple of weeks back, and I had it all lined up ready to talk about, and then I never watched it. But they have now released a full-length trailer.
Well, arguably they released a full-length trailer years ago for this.
Did they? I see. Sorry. Yes, so for those who don't know, Thanksgiving is a film that was initially created as a joke trailer that was put between Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof and Robert Rodriguez's Planet Terror in the double feature Grindhouse. And there was a bunch of different joke trailers in there. Personally, I don't think Thanksgiving was the best one, but there were ones for Machete, which has been made into a film by Robert Rodriguez, yes. But the other one was one called Don't. If you're thinking of going into the house, don't.
And that was Edgar Wright.
That was Edgar Wright. So I believe there's one more too, a very politically incorrect version of Nicolas Cage playing sort of like an old, wise samurai master.
So, I had forgotten about that one.
So perhaps that one won't get made, but I would love to see Edgar Wright's version of Don't.
Yeah.
But yes, so Thanksgiving has finally been made into a real film, and it very much feels like the cheesy slashes. I've seen one called Valentine's Day, which I wouldn't say they're good films, but they're very amusing because they have a really nice balance of the horror and comedy.
What I like about these kinds of films is you know exactly what you're going to get.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like so. And this trailer, I have seen this trailer as well. And this trailer, it doesn't pretend to be anything else than that campy slasher horror. Really silly ways that people die. Like but they are creating a new kind of villain in it.
Yeah, that's true.
Carver.
Yeah, so I'd actually have to return to the original trailer from the Grindhouse film. Are they using any of the same like actors in it? Or?
I can't recall that much.
Because I know they definitely did with Machete or Machete.
Yeah.
It looks like it's going to be a bit of fun. I don't know that I'd be heading out to the movies to see this one, but I'll definitely check it out in some form.
As will I. Sorry, I'm just thinking about Machete. My favorite part from that trailer is, what have you done with my wife and daughter? And he's like naked with both of them. And it's about the cut, because it's like straight from that phone call. Like he's like, "What have you done with my wife and daughter?" And it cuts straight to him.
Well, that's the benefit of them being able to just make a trailer as opposed to making the trailer based on an existing film. You can cut it and edit it however you want.
Because they ended up making Machete and Machete Kills, and then they were going to do Machete in Space,
but yeah,
I think the COVID killed that one off. Anyway,
very disappointing.
Yeah.
As always, guys, I do want to remind you to like, subscribe, share, comment. If you've got future things in terms of segments you want to do, if you'd like to hang shit on me for accidentally deleting the original version of this podcast, please leave plenty of comments below. That is all from us today. Once again, a big apology to Wits and our listeners who were deprived of his words of wisdom. I felt like a right lemon after it all happened, but hopefully we were able to salvage things a little so that it wasn't a complete car crash.
What can I say to that? If I said anything more, I just feel like I was repeating myself. So
yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.